Right. Welcome, everyone. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with the Ordinance 20A, in an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are Peggy Gilgas, Christine Hirsch-Putnam, Jesse Warren, Navarre, Betsy Soulsby, Victoria Walsh, Terry Kent. Did I get everyone? I did. All right, and we also have in attendance. We've got some guests today. John Coles from the Albemarle County Public Schools. And we're gonna go ahead, if everyone is okay, we are going to begin by just looking at, did everybody have a chance to look at the agenda and go ahead and approve that? We do, oh, and Monty is here as well. Welcome, Monty, and welcome, Terry. I adjusted the agenda because of our guest speaker today, John Coles, who's going to speak to us a little bit about recycling and composting in Albemarle County Public Schools. He's the new environmental project coordinator. And so looking forward to hearing from him. So he's been added to, we're putting him at the top of the agenda. And so if we could go ahead and vote to approve the agenda as it stands, as it was posted with that addition. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, wonderful. In a second?
A second.
Terry, thank you. And Jesse, do you approve?
Aye.
Navarre?
Aye.
Monty? Do you approve?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
Thank you. Betsy?
Yeah, that I approve.
And Victoria?
Yes.
I think did we get everyone?
I approve.
Oh, and Sage. Hi, Sage. Thank you. All right, welcome. Fantastic. So without any further ado, if we could welcome John Coles. Thank you for joining us. We're very interested to hear about the composting program rollout, and also if you have any information about the state of recycling in the county schools, we'd love to hear about that as well.
Yeah, I'll do what I can there. So we'll start with the composting. I just kind of got handed the composting. I think, Lindsay Snoddy worked to get that rolled out. We have been working with Nope, who is based out of, I think, the Northern Virginia area. But I think we were able to change vendors back to Black Bear, who services all of our schools. And so we rolled out composting in the kitchens at every one of our schools. And that was a pretty recent thing. And so we're still kind of working out all the details with that and trying to get everybody up to speed on, what is compostable, making sure they're not putting non-compostable plastic bags in there, which has been an issue at a couple of schools. Another little logistical detail is, I was at Scottsville today and I was speaking with the kitchen manager there, and they had gotten their small collection bin, but they didn't know where the big rolling cart was. So it kind of helped facilitate that. And I think it's going to be some of that everywhere. One of the really nice things is that, with Black Bear being a kind of a small local business, they're really in tune with all of it. And so they're able to relay to us, individual issues. This school hasn't put anything in their bin yet. This school has been using plastic bags, and so that's really nice. And that's kind of that helps us to get out to the schools that are not composting yet or having trouble and figure out, what's going on there. For example, he told me that Stony Point wasn't composting, and I was able to speak with them and find out that they're they're actually giving all of their compostable scraps to a local pig farmer who's feeding them to the pigs, and that sort of thing, and kind of get that tailored a little bit. I think it will be a little bit more of a challenge to roll out to the whole schools, because Black Bear is really interested in keeping their compost clean and not getting non-compostable items in there, which has been a real struggle with the recycling as well.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is right now, are all the lunches being served on compostable trays in all the schools?
Yes, we made that change a few years ago.
And I'm wondering, is it possible to collect those trays? It seems like that could be a fairly easy thing that could happen. That's just a real easy, the tray goes into the compost.
Just dump the trash and then throw the tray in the compost. I think that's, feasible. Yeah, I think that could be an easy next step towards moving towards kids composting.
And right now, is the only composting that is happening in the back of the house in the kitchen?
Correct.
And is a lot of the food prepackaged?
I would say, yeah, I think especially at the elementary schools, a lot of it is prepackaged, and a lot of it's going directly out to the kids. And so really all we're getting are little scraps that the kitchen's producing. If they're putting together salads, then we maybe get a few pieces of salad, but we don't get a ton of from what I'm seeing. And like I said, I'm just learning this as well, but from what I'm seeing is mostly scraps, especially at the elementary schools. The middle schools and high schools are producing a little bit more, but for the elementary schools, it's a pretty small amount right now.
Would it be possible to up that by collecting those trays?
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of next step towards moving towards gathering more. But before we went to the compostable trays, they were using styrofoam trays, and so I think that's such a huge improvement right there. But yeah, I think it would be fantastic to try and start collecting those trays back.
Yeah, because it's a shame to have spent the resources on that,
Mm-hmm.
the money to purchase them and to have them go into the landfill.
Agree.
So, does anyone else have a question?
I guess I'll Peggy.
I noticed that I saw a copy of the first composting report for the schools, and I noticed that some schools are doing significantly better than others. Meriwether Lewis, for example, had many 10 times the amount of compost, and I was wondering if you discovered what their secret is yet.
So I think what we're seeing there is this most recent rollout. I think those kitchen bins just went out right before Christmas. And so I think, schools like Meriwether Lewis had a robust Meriwether Community Lab School. The high schools, I think, already had robust composting plans before this switch over to Black Bear composting and the rollout to all the schools. And so I think what we're seeing there is that report is at the end of year end of 2021. And so we're just getting maybe a month or so of composting.
Thank you.
So, the compostable trays, I just want to ask, is there an ability, obviously it's better than styrofoam, but what was it pre-COVID? Were there the kinds that we could wash, or has it been styrofoam for a long time?
I think it was kind of on a school by school basis. And I think that's more a question to be directed to child nutrition, which I intend to ask. But I think for the most part, from what I was seeing when I was in the schools, it was about 50-50. Some of the schools were using reusables, but most of them were using the styrofoam.
What do we think's best practice, Christine? I mean, from an environmental perspective, it's probably reuse, right? And then is that doable now in this day and age or not? I don't
know if it's doable in this day and age. I think they're still packing up a lot of stuff to go to the classrooms. I mean, a lot of schools are now eating in their cafeterias, but they're still sending stuff to classrooms. But I don't think we're too far off from getting back to you know, being able to redo the reusable trays. And I do think that would be the best practice.
And that pig composting one, that sounds great. That's not composting, going straight to,
Sure.
if we can help facilitate more of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice because I think if that's sustainable for them, we might even cancel their composting service so that we don't even have to pay for that. I mean, you know, we've got to see if we're going to try and get trays. I don't know that the pigs will eat trays, but.
Well, if we can help get more of that going, like I'm happy to, you know, who is the farm it's going to?
Right.
Talk to that farm. How's it going? Assume it's all going great. Let's figure out who else. I mean, maybe they'd play nice and say, what are the other pig farms in the area that we could call or reach out to or whatever?
Yeah. And I guess my question was, what is, and I need to speak a little bit more with Lindsay about that too. What is our motivation for the composting? Is it just to divert from landfills, or is it, you know, the greenhouse gas reduction?
Well, I would say it's all of those things, right? We're trying to divert from landfills, reduce greenhouse gases, and also it's a really important part of education. It's important for us to help our students understand the best practices and to teach them how to engage in those practices and provide an example. And so that's the reason why it's so important to us on this committee to make sure that this is instituted in the schools. In addition to that, also the recycling.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's one of the things we really dealt with the recycling, you know, because prior to that, I mean, a lot of these kids, I think the Vanderlyn single stream had been around for 12 or 13 years. And so we had a whole generation of students who didn't know how to recycle. And so I do think we really saw that, and we had to do a lot of education there with what is recyclable and all that, because they were just so used to throwing it all in the same container. And so I do think we've seen a lot of benefit there with the recycling. And so I do think we can get there with the compost, but I think it's going to take time and it's going to take a lot of manpower.
Terry, I see your hands up, but just because John asked a question and then I'll hand it off to you. I mean, part of what I want to do is I've got 4 kids in Albemarle schools.
Sure.
I don't think they have gotten any environmental kind of instruction that I can sense apart from what I've given them.
Right.
And what I'd love to do, however, it doesn't have to be me, whoever wants to do it, the Climate Collaborative, is to be able to get in the schools once things are getting back to normal, and have a discussion with these kids where we can touch on several environmental things that they can do. Everything for me, it's a lot of just use less. I think it's American.
Yeah, I agree.
Way too much. And that if we could get, and I don't know what the format is, if we get half an hour of their time and hit a few high level things, and then here's how you're helping in the schools, but then they can take this home and be kind of a force multiplier. And that's how I see us having the biggest impact. And I know a couple of us, at least Christine and I, have applied for to be on the school, what is it, the advisory committee on sustainability with the school board. Because I just think one of the biggest things we can do is get the kids to start doing this early, take it to their families, a lifestyle, and that's my objective.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the idea. And I think in the schools, that's, you know, the composting and the recycling is really important. But I think we also need to start focusing more on the waste reduction, not bringing it in the first place.
Terry, thank you.
Yeah, you know, John, I was just going to ask, you know, what could we do to help you? I mean, we're kind of all getting to that.
Right.
We're alluding to it, but I just wanted to, you know, directly ask, like, if you could deploy us in any way, shape to help, what would be the most helpful? Like, at least for this next, you know, I feel like we're, you know, it's March, we're looking at kind of staring down at the end of the school year.
Sure.
I mean, I hate to even say that, but it's true. And so in other words, what would be most helpful short term, but could we do to kind of plant a foundation for like a kicking off to a great start in the fall?
Yeah, I think that's such a big question. I think one of the hard things for me is that this composting recycling is maybe, you know, 1% of my job. And we really need, you know, people in the schools working with the students. I guess it was right before the pandemic. So I guess it would have been 2019. Scottsville Elementary wanted to start doing composting in their cafeteria. And Scottsville was outside of the range of NOBE, who was our provider at the time. And so we were, folks from building services, we had a few interns at the time, and myself and Lindsay, we were going down to Scottsville every day and standing in the cafeteria at lunchtime and, helping the students. And I think it's going to take that for months in pretty much every school to really get the stuff going. And one of the things that I really hate to see is like rejected loads, to go through all that effort and have it rejected both on the recycling side and the compost side, because there's stuff in those bins that's not supposed to be in there.
Yeah.
So I think I really just think people in the schools, especially at lunchtime, because that's when we generate so much of that recyclable and compostable waste.
And is there like a mechanism? Like I know at Agner Hurt, they do video announcements. Are there video announcements, or like, because I could see very easily us doing, I know once upon a time we talked about like maybe a video, like a back of the house video, that'd be cool for this kids to see. Or I know I've worked with Lauren at the county. She's a great videographer, like getting her kind of keyed in. Is that something that?
Yeah, I think that's feasible. I think it's up to each school how they choose to kind of disseminate that information. But I think having the information available is really huge.
Can I ask, John, would you be open to meeting with a small group of us?
Absolutely.
To discuss further and to brainstorm ideas, because we really do want to be helpful. And this is really important to us. And,
I think so.
I mean, I myself am ready to spend some time at the schools in the cafeteria to help out. So,
and I think, the schools where we see on that document I sent over, the schools where you're seeing the high numbers are the schools where we have an invested staff member. And so the schools that don't have an invested staff member are the ones that aren't participating. Because like I said, I just can't be at all the schools every day to do this. And so I think with help from you guys and like-minded people, I think we could have a better shot at getting the students to where it kind of is self-sustaining a little more. Maybe the older kids, and that's hard with the separated lunchtimes. You don't have the older kids helping the younger kids, but
I think we agree is create a system. So it's, and I don't know if we took John, what we talked to Lindsay about, or what we heard was in Crozet Elementary. We talked about that at all are you aware, like, the principal there, Gwinnett Crummy, had really been successful in getting that program going. It helped them get, what was it, the Green Ribbon school or whatever, and that she had a whole, sounded like self-sustaining system where you had like kids that were I'm making this up, but it was something along the lines of like compost ambassadors, and they would be assigned that role. They could win prizes and that kind of thing. She said most of the time they didn't even want the prizes. It was all about, they felt good about it. They could hand it off to the next generation each time. I want to say it started as young as maybe 4th grade. So anyway, they had that system going, and it's kind of what, to your point, somebody didn't have to be there holding their hand the whole time. Maybe yes, early on.
Yeah. But one of the things about Crozet was, and I don't know, it may have changed now, but when we first rolled out that recycling program, they said, hey, we got the compost. We're not interested in anything else. And again, that was 4 years ago, so they may be doing a little more now. But yeah, I think it's going to take something like that. It's going to take a staff member, and there it was Gwinnett. I know at Community Lab School, I'm blanking on her name, Fran Reset, is really involved with the composting there and kind of keeps it going. And so I think it just takes an individual in the school to really do that. And where that's lacking, I think it is going to have to be volunteers until they can kind of get themselves going.
Well, maybe that's something that we could think about before the end of the year, is somehow like connecting, trying to find that like one person in the school. It sounds like there's some people that have self-identified and chosen that role for themselves, but there are probably other people. And if we could maybe communicate with them or make that outreach, maybe that's something that we could, like a relationship that we could, foster over the summer. So to take Carrie's and Monty's point about like beginning the school year really strong, because and Monty, when you said that, I had this idea of, you remember I don't know if you guys went to city schools, but you'd have like the leader students and they'd be the crosswalk people, and they'd have that special marker.
Safety
they stood
people,
out.
Baby.
Yes.
That's what Lynchburg. I'm from Lynchburg. You got that badge, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that idea of like training the students. So kind of, and your point of like developing some kind of infrastructure. So if maybe we could make it a goal to connect with, find a teacher or teachers in the school that could be the point person, so that it's like, kind of just like chain of communication and dissemination, and having that be, position of honor, maybe in the, in a school. That would be very cool. John, I also have to ask you something. Could you briefly, you said this is 1% of your job. Can you just give a brief overview of what else you, like the other 99%?
Sure. So I do, I've kind of recently changed a little bit and added on a few more things, not really had anything taken away. But one of the bigger components I do is well water treatment at our 5 schools that are on well water. I do environmental projects. We've got 2 electric school buses that I wrote the grant for on the way, and we've got hopefully 2 more that we're waiting to hear back on. I'm doing the solar. I'm project manager for the solar installations at Red Hill and Scottsville. I track all of our, enter in the bills and track and monitor all of our utility usage to make sure that we're using that wisely. Those are some of the big things, but the list just goes on and
Mostly
on.
you're like a project person rather than someone's like in the school working with the teachers and the students. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. I do kind of, honestly, I think in the not too far off future, the well water component may go away, which will free up about a day a week for me, which is nice.
Yeah.
But it does, those 5 schools are the 5 schools that I'm most connected with.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for doing those school buses. That's super.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. We just met with Dominion Energy yesterday to talk about our chargers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, we're going to look forward to following up with you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to come talk to you guys anytime I can. That would be helpful to you all.
Yeah, thank you. And please know that we really want to partner with you, and
absolutely.
And welcome to this new job. And thank you for all your efforts. And I believe, Isabella, did you have a question? I see your hand up.
I think that's Sharice, actually.
That's
Sharice.
me. I'm sorry.
Sharice, I'm sorry. Hi,
It's
Sharice.
okay. Hi. Hi. I just wanted to ask John a quick question, because maybe he can help us out with collecting recycling numbers from the Albemarle schools. Do you know if that is something that goes directly to the county, or would you know anything about it?
In terms of the amount that's collected?
Correct.
I don't. I was actually just thinking about that when I saw this sheet from Black Bear. But to my knowledge, there's not any sort of data collected on that.
Okay.
I was going to reach out, and unfortunately, now that, I guess not unfortunately, but just it's a challenge now that county waste has been bought by Green for Life or transitioned to Green for Life. We don't have as good of contacts there so far, though we certainly hope to develop those relationships.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the information you gave too today. Absolutely. It was very interesting.
And I was going to reach out to the folks there and see if they had anything like this for our schools, or even if they could just let us know, kind of like the guy from Black Bear did, kind of which schools are consistently. Anytime I'm out of a school, I always kind of peek in their recycling bins and compost bins and see how it looks. But it'd be good to get their perspective on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to let you go. And
of course.
Nice to meet you, and look forward to talking with you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
Bye, you too.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a big job, but exciting things happening in that realm as well. So we approved the agenda, if we could go ahead and approve the February minutes. And so I hope everybody had an opportunity to take a look at those. And if no one has any questions, if somebody could move to approve the February minutes.
So moved.
Thank you,
A
Monty.
second.
Thank you, Peggy. All right. Jesse.
Aye.
Anne. Hi, Anne. All right. I'm going to move to Terry.
Yes, I.
Okay. Navar.
Aye.
Monty. Oh, you already moved to do that. Yeah. Sage.
Yeah.
Okay. And Betsy.
Yes.
Victoria.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Anne is here too.
Oh,
Sorry.
hi, Anne. Okay, fantastic. All right. So, Anne, do you have any updates for the Plastic Waste Prevention Advisory Council meeting? I believe there was one in February.
Yeah, we had a really great meeting in February. It was focused on, supportive policies for the circular economy for plastics. So we had a woman named Risa Domino present on sort of a whole continuum of different types of policy options, everything from universal and mandatory recycling all the way through EPR. And then we did a deep dive into EPR and a deep dive into deposit legislation. And I presented on sort of the state of plastics recycling and look specifically at sort of where plastics reclamation is occurring, and noted that Virginia is a big gap, like North Carolina, even West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Maryland all have a lot more reclamation capacity than Virginia. So that actually got the attention of, the Virginia Manufacturers Association rep was there, and he thought that was pretty interesting. So it was a good meeting. The next one is going to be on non-policy options, and that will be, we're still trying to hammer down a date. Looks like probably going to happen in May, and that will be looking at grant programs. I don't know, this is actually a policy option, but it's an unusual one, which is the state of California has passed a truth in labeling, SBS 343, which says you cannot use the chasing arrows unless you meet certain thresholds of performance within the state of California. Otherwise, it's deceptive to consumers. And Oregon is doing the same thing. They're developing an acceptable list. So this is really changing the landscape on recyclability claims. So I think it's actually a great strategy that potentially forces a lot of other things to occur. The other one is there's been a huge growth in recycled content mandates. And so we had a discussion about, we have content mandates now in California, Washington, New Jersey, and Connecticut is contemplating, well, they've passed it. They're just figuring out where to set them. And this is specifically for plastics. So that's a demand side policy. And, those are creating demand, but it's driving the price of recovered plastics up because the supply is, delinked from demand because consumers get no economic signal to participate in recycling. So we have an inelastic supply of recyclables given our current sort of structure. So that was a pretty interesting conversation that we had around that. So it's good. I think we'll be making some interesting recommendations in our report.
All right. Thank you so much, Anne. It's good to hear some good news. All right. And Peggy, thank you so much, and Navar, from working on these updates for the recycling FAQs and the quick reference guide. And those have all been completed, right, Peggy? Oh, you're muted.
They have been. They've just gone to EJ today, so they need to be up. They need to be uploaded in tandem, really, because there are many references to the quick reference guide and links in the recycling FAQs document.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you for all that work, both of you. And next on the list, Jesse, you're going to set up a meeting with Jay Zook and Scott DeFife, and that's just sort of on these list of action items, which we can talk
That's
about.
correct.
Yeah.
We talked about that at our ops meeting, and when you get around to me, I will talk about it.
Okay, fantastic. And then my action item was I was going to write up it could be a quarterly recycling tip that was all focused on plastic films and plastic bags. And I sent that to Emily Kilroy and Serena, and just waiting to hear back from them. And then Peggy had checked to see about, followed up about local pharmacies and their take back programs.
Yeah, they aren't really doing take back, but Region 10 produced this card for people who are looking to what can they do with their prescription medicines. And it says, take as prescribed, do not share, lock it up, dispose responsibly. And then you turn it over and it gives medication disposal options. You know, in Green, Fluvanna, and Louisa, there are drop-off boxes at the sheriff's, and then it lists our Centaur, Martha Jefferson, and UVA pharmacy lists. And then it's been announced that April 30th will be the drug take-back day, the one that the Albemarle County Public Police do usually twice a year with Centaur. And so we should be seeing, they told me they would send me a flyer as soon as it's out about where the drop-off will be occurring, usually at Centaur. But Betsy told me that last year they also did drop-off at Wegmans, where you just literally drive up and dump your medications in a bag that the police are holding out for you. So that's the update on that.
So I have some questions related to that. So just to confirm, April 30th, Centaur take back, maybe Wegmans, we don't know yet. And then so one, Top Notch has their little dispensary that you can do at any time. So I just want to make sure everybody knows about that. And then
I did not know about Top Notch. When you say they have a dispensary, you mean they have a little box where you can dispose of your medications? Okay.
Yes. And then, and then tell me again who the first, you were reading off a box. Like I didn't.
Oh, it's a small card that Region 10 has given to local pharmacies to hand out to people who have inquiries about what can they do with their unused or expired medications.
Gotcha. Cool.
Hey, Terry, can I ask you something? Do you have to get your medicine from Top Notch? I was wondering if they would have that. Cool. So just
so that's what I did with mine, because I just didn't want to wait till the take back day. So. Okay,
good to know. Thanks.
I'd also add in, it doesn't have to be prescription. It can be over the counter.
Hey, Peggy, why don't pharmacies take back? Is it a liability or risk thing, or?
I don't know why, honestly. It may be a risk thing, you know, that they can't have control or custody of it sufficiently, that they don't feel confident about that.
It is a risk thing. That's why when we do the take backs, the police department has to be there. The chain of command on the medications.
All right, thank you guys.
Clarify, does that mean that UVA is no longer doing the one they had in their lobby, I guess? Is that old news?
Both UVA and Centaur are still receiving medications, Centaur through their pharmacy, and UVA has a 24/7 accessible drop box. It's like a big metal mailbox.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a consolidated list of these places anywhere that you know about, Peggy?
Or a quick reference guide.
That's what, okay.
It does not have Top Notch on it because I didn't know about Top Notch, but it has, look for the drug take back days and the UVA address and the Centaur address and the hours of operation for those.
Nice, thanks.
So, I'm going to ask something that shows my IT ignorance. If you were to type in drug drop off Albemarle County, would these places show up on Google Maps? And if not, how do we get them to show up?
Good question. It's worth trying.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's how everybody operates, right? Is you use your phone and you look up something. So it would be worth sort of looking into that, because that and batteries, we should have answers for.
Yeah. And if it's on the Albemarle County website, if you were to type in Albemarle County and drug takebacks program, something like that should come up, right?
I don't know if it would in the recycling FAQs, I guess. The quick reference guide is just a document that you can open. I don't know if you can search it on the website for the county.
Well, that's a good exercise for us. Try to figure that out. So we're going to go to the county report out. Now, 2 of these items are probably going to, the GBB study, we're going to discuss in new business, and also that we also have sort of a discussion of the paper sort, which relates somewhat to perhaps to the Northern Convenience Center. So, but I'm going to pass it on to Lance or EJ for the county report out. At least to talk about the spring litter events, for sure.
Yeah, sorry, I had to come in late to the meeting. My apologies. EJ sent out sort of a list of prompting questions earlier. I believe she was going to. I've been in meetings all day. So, you know, I don't know if how many of you had a chance to read that, whether you thought something, you know, stood out among those that you felt was worth discussing. I think rather than me trying to ask the questions one by one and have that be stumpers, it might be best if you all thought that there was something that you felt particularly, you know, is relevant to SWAC's mission.
Well, I think, Lance, if you don't mind, I think we're going to go ahead and just talk about the GBB study at the end in new business, and then we can address some of those prompts that you had put out there. And I think Peggy's going to give a little bit of history. And we also have Teddy Hamilton, who's a former SWAC member who helped develop this, the Chapter 13 hauler revisions on that. So we have her wisdom as well. But I put on the Northern Convenience Center the fact that it's in the 2023 budget, and wondering if does that include, if you wanted to say a couple words about that?
Yeah, it's not, at this point, there's no specific site noted. The estimate that I provided does include a cost for land acquisition. There is one property that's been proffered to us that we are studying for multiple uses. We'll have that study wrapped in about 3 months, and the multiple uses include local government and schools uses for that site. But I think certainly, I think among the options for local government uses, that's my top priority for potential reuse of that site. It is entirely undeveloped though, so wooded property that's got some topography challenges. So it's not the least expensive place to build, even though we don't have to pay for it. But the funding for construction and also the containers and trash compactors are modeled on what we have at the plan for the Southern Convenience Center in terms of quantity and type, and also what we're seeing in the current market for the cost of those, which is considerably more today than they were a couple of years ago when we first planned that, because of the price of steel primarily. Steel mark prices for what they call cold rolled steel is up 150% from 2 years ago. because of some Trump era tariffs that were put in place, which is great for the US steel market and economy in terms of steel manufacturers, but not so good for people who buy things that are made from steel, which is pretty much all of us. It's up among a number of things for the board to consider whether they support funding it. And we put our best information forward to them about what it would look like and what it would cost.
All right, thank you. It's helpful just to know what was put out there. So thank you for that. And EJ, did you want to say anything about the spring litter events?
Sure. Let me try to get my camera going. It might not want to. Oh, there it is. Excellent. Minor technical difficulties. So we do have a litter cleanup coming out of Yancey on March 28th. We're still working with the schools for a possible school site litter cleanup in April. Katina Dudley is in the process of working with her contacts at Albemarle High School and Jewett and Greer to see if we can incorporate a cleanup day or clean up few hours along with some classwork for the kids. We would not be doing any of the classwork. It would really be obviously the teachers being able to incorporate going out and cleaning up their campus with some of the lecture work that they're doing inside the classroom. So Katina is still on the hunt to lock down those details. And as soon as we have them, we'll be communicating those out. Ed Brooks has the lead on communicating out along with Kate about the March 28th workday.
All right, thank you. It's exciting to think that the schools are this is a possibility for the kids to get out there cleaning things up.
We're very excited about that possibility as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I thought we would just go ahead and do our work group report outs, and then we can get into the meaty business of the GBB study and the rest. So planning and vision.
Yeah, so I'm getting really more into the chapter 13 HOLO requirements or revisions when we get to that. But I did just want to give you an update on the legislative picture for plastics or waste. You may recall that Virginia was going to institute a ban on polystyrene for food and beverage service and expanded styrofoam. And it was supposed to start in effect in next year, 2023, with larger companies that have multiple outlets. And then smaller companies would follow like 2 years later in 2025. That got pushed back by 5 years. So now with the change in the legislature, so now it's not scheduled to go into effect for the larger chains until 2028, and for the smaller companies or restaurants, food outlets, 2 years after that, which is unfortunate. So that's all I had to report about legislative changes. And I just want to mention that while we're going to start tracking the comprehensive plan updates, we should also, considering the 2015 long range report that we reviewed last month, that is coming up on, that's 8 years old now. That's coming up on a 10-year horizon. And we probably want to consider how that should be updated for our next moves in sustainable materials management and making more progress on our climate action plan. So that's all I'll say for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Peggy. Jesse, do you want to give a report on?
Sure. We had a good meeting a week or two ago. The ops group consists of myself, Terry, Monty, and Victoria. That means there are 4 of us, that means that 2 of us is no longer a quorum. So we feel that we can have conversations with others 2 at a time and still be not in, we would still be in compliance with the county's public meeting laws. Any thoughts or feedback on that statement before I continue with my update?
Yeah, you're not an official subcommittee. Yeah, anyhow, yes.
Right. So we've got 4 people, 2 is not a quorum. That allows us to talk to people again, which is nice. So we talked a little bit in our meeting about glass recycling in both Nelson County and sort of at large. I'm going to reach out to Jay Zook with Christine, and we're going to have a conversation about both messaging for glass into the recycling center, as well as messaging for plastic films into the recycling center and compost into the recycling center. We're also going to engage with Jay in a conversation about whether or not they want to be a hauler for glass from these breweries or wineries directly to Ivy, which would take it for free. Now, on that front, we've had some conversations about how we approach Nelson. And so Scott DeFife and Monty and I talked today, actually, about what needs to happen for the Glass Recycling Foundation, I think I said that right, to be a potential grant provider for Nelson County's cans, right? The large roll-off containers that the glass will go into. We're going to continue to engage with Steve Carter over at Nelson County, and Isabella and Sharice. I'm interested in seeing if Friends of Nelson would like to co-sign such a grant application. It would be co-funded by Nelson County, but again, I think having community support is better than not. So yeah, any thoughts on how we engage Friends of Nelson?
As far as TJPDC goes, because we're just trying to understand the role that you want us to play in it. Because we saw the emails from Terry, and so we have to like go back to our supervisors, and sure. Definitely we can. I'm trying to think. Letter of support wouldn't be a problem, but we just want to know so we can go back to make sure we're telling you the correct, involvement that we would be able to have. That, and
so let me answer that question.
Okay.
Right now, I think I just need access to your. I think right now the best thing that we can do is connect to others like Friends of Nelson, and if you help me make that connection to them, then if you like, you can provide a letter of support for the proposed grant application. Thoughts?
Okay, I'm sorry, you were kind of trailing off.
I do that.
No, your actual sound was trailing off.
Sorry, so, I'm crossing the Chesapeake Bay right now, which is fun, but cell phone reception might be poor.
I just want to be clear on what you said. I don't want to take up too much time with this meeting because we can discuss, email back and forth. But I just want to make sure you want us to introduce you to Nelson County Cares. Is that what you said?
Yes, if that's the name of the group. I thought it was Friends of Nelson.
Friends of Nelson.
Nelson County Cares would be cool too.
Okay, no, Friends of Nelson. Okay, so Jesse, you and I will discuss, or you, Isabella, Terry, and the whole group.
Yeah, because that's why I was involved, because we've got 2 contacts. C3 has 2 contacts to Friends of Nelson, so I'm happy to do and like kind of group intro if needed. So yeah.
That would be great. So why don't we do that? Why don't we do a group introduction that gets everybody, including TJPDC, on an email chain. If TJPDC desires to provide a letter of support for what we're doing, that's just an extra sort of oomph. But I'm really looking for the users in Nelson to say, yes, we want this. And so the government says, yes, we want this. So the Glass Recycling Foundation says, yes, we will help you get this.
Okay. And Steve Carter is already involved. So that was like one of the other questions. Like, was it?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Steve Carter has been presented to, and
Okay, this is just information we can take back to our supervisor, and because these are the questions he was asking us. Okay, all right.
Yeah, Steve basically said this is too expensive, and then we said, well, let's find some ways to piece together funding. And we're looking at others besides Nelson County to help with those cans. Okay, so with that said, we're working with the Glass Recycling Foundation to get this grant together. I'd like to get that email chain going with everybody just so we can all get on the same page about the Nelson County thing. And then
it's going across that bay.
I think we've talked at length about composting. Sorry?
Losing you a little bit.
Oh, I'm just going to ask Sharice and Isabella, is there anything you want to share from the solid waste planning unit perspective?
Just in general about solid waste, food or the solid waste management plan. It was sent out in October. Fluvanna County is building, or they're closing one industrial landfill that was polluting the James River because they, it was polluting James River, and VDEQ gave them a timeline on when they had to have that closed. So therefore, it had to be written into the plan that was put in October, which meant that the plan was not finished. So we had to have a public meeting about the captive industrial landfill that they need a permit to build that is required by VDEQ in order for that not to happen anymore. So basically, there was a public meeting at the TJPDC commission meeting on Thursday night to discuss the captive industrial landfill. Obviously, it was passed. So we're rewriting that in so they can get the permit to build this captive industrial landfill and sending it back to the VDEQ. So that's the update.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great update. And then if anybody else has anything they want to bring up, I'm going to propose a next meeting date.
Peggy has a question.
I just had a question, Sharice. I didn't catch the name of the landfill that is causing the problem with the pollution in the James.
It's a Dominion Energy landfill at Brimble Bluff.
Okay.
Fly ash.
Is
yeah.
it?
Yes, exactly. I was going to look for the email to give you exact information, but yes, that's exactly what it is. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do they plan to move the fly ash to another line? Is that what they're going to do?
What they're doing, to my understanding, is they are building this captive industrial landfill that's right next to where they are, but it's captive. So therefore, it won't go into the river anymore. It won't have access to the river, but it's right next to where the current landfill is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
So on that note, can I propose a next meeting for a date for our ops team?
Sure.
I'm going to take that as a yes. So March 24th is a Thursday at noon at the usual location. What do y'all think?
That works for me.
I like Thursdays because it frees up Fridays. All right. If I'm hearing no complaints, so that's going to be our meeting date. I'll send it out next week when I return home.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Boy, I'm jealous. You're in a beautiful spot over there across in Chesapeake Bay. So the outreach committee, we met at the library in February, and we talked about there's an environmental stewardship hub. It's going to be the Albemarle County website is going to have this hub that's focused on environmental stewardship. So I've been trying to get some material together for that, and I got some better understanding of how that's going to get laid out, and I'm going to continue to work on that. But I did get feedback from the group, and I don't know if Betsy and I still are out there being recycling ambassadors at McIntyre Recycling Center. And I also want to say that Peggy and I are going to give a presentation to the Sierra Club on March 23rd. So on recycling. And thank you to Sage. She did a bunch of work on compiling all these HOAs and working on getting contact information for them. So she shared the spreadsheet with everybody. So if you have any information that you can add or contacts, that would be super helpful. And so really appreciate that if everybody could take a look at that and help add whatever knowledge they have. And I'm going to keep it short and sweet because we have so much other business to look at. But if anybody else wants to add from the group, I invite you now to do that. We are going to, I'm not able to make, we were trying to have a set meeting on the fourth Thursday of every month, and I cannot make it and Betsy cannot make it. So we're going to try for the 17th of March at the Northside Library at 5 p.m. and hope others can make it. All right, so as we jumped into the new business, I actually going to jump to the bottom of this list right here. We have the synthetic turf, because just recently during the Board of Supervisor meetings, and maybe Don and Jim could chime in as well, that there were quite a bit of interest in synthetic turf. And this is something that we had talked about in SWAC pre-pandemic. And I think that we had some pretty clear ideas and feelings about the use of artificial turf in terms of what happens to it after. There are a lot of concerns, right? Concerned about putting more plastic into our environment, and can it actually be recycled? And so what we would like to propose is that we would like to write a letter outline some of those concerns to the Board of Supervisors as an informational piece. Yes, Donna.
I would recommend that you do that sooner than later, because on March 23rd, we're going to have, as part of our budget process, a special meeting that will specifically talk about this. And we are looking at improvements that have been made in turf fields. I don't know what they are. We're looking to hear what those are in terms of both safety and recyclability. So if you want to have SWAC have input, then the letter needs to be to the board before March 23rd.
All right. So thank you, Donna. So Peggy has offered to compose this letter. And so what we would like to do is we would like to vote on this. If everyone agrees that this is a good idea, Peggy will compose the letter and send it by all of us, and we will have an opportunity for input, and then she will send the letter off. Yes, Terry.
Is there any way we can have Teddy give us like a headline of the findings? I'm just super curious because I've just heard of different perspectives on this issue, and to be honest, I myself don't have 100% clarity. Of course, my gut wants to say no, but I want to make sure that I have all the information.
I don't know if, Teddy, do you want to weigh in on that? Or we can send information to how does that sound okay? So that everybody feels like they've got some good background information, and that as you read the letter, that you feel informed.
Yeah, I think, we had discussed previously writing a letter and approved the idea of it, just to draft a position, our sense of what it means to install artificial fields, how it fits with our sustainability vision and our climate action goals. And I think we would want to do that again and have everybody's input. I am curious to know who is providing information about changes in the safety or recyclability of the fields to the board. I mean, are you having a formal presentation by a group?
Yeah, Kimley Horn.
Oh yes, okay. So Kimley Horn was going to do this back in February of 2020 or so. I have notes that we're going to address 8 questions that the board had posed at the time about the feasibility and safety of installing fields. And so is it basically you're getting back to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Little hand. I have gone back and forth, I will tell you, on the 2+ years now that I've been on the board in terms of the turf fields. Clearly on the environmental side, there are major concerns, but we're also looking at our parks utilization. And so we have asked, Trevor Henry is the assistant county attorney who oversees Parks and Rec, as well as, I'm sorry?
Not county attorney, county executive.
Oh, county executive, sorry. And he oversees Parks and Rec. And so I know several of the supervisors have gone to him and asked as part of the budget process, because we have a lot of communications coming from members of the community, and they're not all in favor of turf fields. Everyone is in favor of improving our recreational capacity so that our family members don't need to travel to other locations. Instead, people can come here. So that's the best I can say, is that we've asked to get this kind of information on basically every consideration we need to look at: cost, recycling, environmental, safety, all of that kind of stuff. Tim, I don't know if you want to add any more stuff.
All right. If I would like to make a motion that we give Peggy our blessing to compose a letter concerning the synthetic fields and to send it to the Board of Supervisors with the SWAC position on that.
I'll make that motion.
You'll second it?
I want to make sure I understand the motion. We're still circulating it to the committee for their input.
And the letter will be circulated after Peggy composes it for feedback and input from the committee members.
Great.
And so, Terry, you're going to second that?
Did somebody already make the motion? Did you?
I made the motion.
Perfect. I'll second it.
Okay. And I'm going to go down the roll here. Peggy, are you in agreement?
Yes.
Bessie?
Aye.
Anne?
Yes.
Navarre?
Aye.
Monty?
Can I abstain? I'm just not sure about this one. I just don't know like the pros and cons. Am I allowed to just say I abstain?
Yes.
Okay.
And Sage?
Yes, I second it.
Okay.
I mean, I support it. Yeah, because we're just gathering information.
Right.
Yes.
And Betsy?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Victoria?
I think I have the same question Monty does. We're just agreeing to look at the letter.
And you will have feedback. You'll be able to give feedback on the letter and in support of, once feedback has been given, to sending the letter to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
Do you want to abstain, or are you okay?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Can I just put something in there? One thing that the letter might be done in the letter is to acknowledge that there are pros and cons or different concerns. I mean, often that's something that one does, and so that might help address, questions that some members here have, or what are the possible benefits, or why might this be attractive? And so having that information in there would probably make the letter deepen the present the SWAC committee's letter if it was sent as being more thoughtful and grounded in a well-rounded knowledge, and for people like Monty and other people that were concerned, and people like me who don't really know much about it, that might be helpful. So that's could be something to be considered also.
So Christine, we had that presentation on turf fields like 2 years ago. Can we dredge up what was presented in the notes from that meeting to maybe just circulate?
We can definitely go back to, we've had this discussion, and we'll go back and take a look at what was presented then. Did we have a presentation?
No, we didn't have a presentation.
But we did.
I know we had a big discussion on it. We had sort of pros and cons. We did have some information that was shared.
And we can share those minutes from that meeting. How's that sound?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I think that would be good.
And it'll help to give everybody some background.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, thank you so much for that. And I'm sorry to kind of jump around, but now we are going to talk about the GBB study and the hauler requirements in Chapter 13 revisions. And Peggy, do you mind helping give a little bit of background for everyone?
Not at all. Let's see. The idea of hauler requirements came up a long time ago. Actually, it's part of, as we discussed last month, it was part of the long range committee's plan, because we need metrics about how much waste we generate, how much is actually getting recycled, and we've never had access to that kind of information. It has been the case in the state of Virginia that some communities have instituted requirements. For example, Loudoun instituted hauler requirements back in 2002. So that's 20 years ago. Our county code, Chapter 13, includes information about requirements and I think permitting as well for haulers to operate in the county of Albemarle. But our county code is extremely outdated. And in 2020, it came up that Greg Campner and county staff were beginning to methodically review the county code and update sections of the code. Chapter 13 deals with recycling and solid waste management in the county and with haulers. So the Planning and Vision Committee, which at that time constituted Teddy Hamilton as the leader of the group and me working with her, reviewed and updated, we proposed revisions to the Chapter 13 code to require reporting. It's, you don't need state permission to, we already have it's already granted to us by the state to ask for information from the haulers. And if you read the GBB report, you can see, for example, what Loudoun County asks for. I think it's, if you just make a note of it, it's like page 9 of the GBB report. It's a whole list of things that are really important for us to know. Anyway, so way back when we made the revisions to the code, and what was going to happen was that this was like in February of 2020. The code was going to be reviewed by, Lance had reviewed it and was going to discuss it with Greg Campner, the county lawyer. And that never occurred because subsequently COVID, the pandemic, raised its head and meetings were suspended. For example, we didn't have an April meeting, and there was a lot of concern about the county's budget. And anyway, the county lawyer was very involved with pandemic regulations. And so the whole idea of reviewing the ordinance was put aside. But before that point, the SWAC had voted unanimously to send the revisions on. We had approved the revisions and to send them on to Greg Campner for review and to take the next steps in advancing the revisions of the county code. And so that all went on ice. And subsequently, the city contracted with GBB, and it was clear that we could jump onto that contract to get some consulting work done. And we also, Lance asked GBB to also investigate the provision of hauler requirements. What were some standards? And it's interesting that in the SWAC's planning and vision group, we used Arlington County as a model. And GBB used Loudoun County and also Portland, Oregon. They have very different models, both very good. But that's basically the history on this. Christine sent out to you all, Lance sent out to us all the GBB report, and Christine sent out the Chapter 13 revisions, which were unanimously approved by the SWAC on January 9th of 2020. So, I mean, the main thing is, I think both GBB and the Planning and Vision Committee and the SWAC came to the conclusion that updating our hauler requirements and making requirements for the haulers to meet certain, to report to us primarily so that we had metrics, but also just that we would have contact information for them, for example. We've all experienced how difficult it is to make contact with people who are actually involved in the hauling operations within the county. And we can require them to basically register with us, give us their contact information, have annual permitting requirements to operate their trucks throughout the county. And we can also ask them to report to us. Here's the list that Loudoun requires of reporting. You can see it's comprehensive and it's information that we've never had. And this is critical to sustainable materials management in our county, and also to our climate action plan. The sustainable materials management section of the plan metrics is critical. So, I just think I'm not sure that we would want to go as far as Portland, Oregon's plan. We don't really have a plan, and we had discussed this in the past, of trying to assign haulers to certain regions of the county, partly because we don't want to shut out entrepreneurs and startups who may be offering different kinds of services for waste and recycling and composting that work well for different constituencies around the county. And so I don't think that, right now with the size that Albemarle County is, that we would want to go with the Portland, Oregon type of model. It also requires a very lengthy period of transition to have the approval of all the haulers that are operating in the county. And I think that in the way things are operating now, people like to have their choice of a hauler. And we also want to foster growth in recycling, composting, and waste management services. So we probably don't want to say that there's a pie with so many slices and each hauler can have one slice of the pie. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they want to say so far? No. Let's see. If you all reviewed the revisions to Chapter 13 that we approved in 2020, We wanted to divide the haulers by major haulers and minor haulers based on the tonnage per month. And we established that at 20 tons per month. Anything upwards of that figure is a major hauler, and anyone below that is a minor hauler. We wanted to institute quarterly reports of tonnages, and for smaller haulers, it would be perhaps maybe only an annual report and not a quarterly report. I think, I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to see what EJ sent out earlier about what sort of considerations we would want to have in making requirements. I think we just need to get on the road. We just need to start somewhere. And I think we could start with something very basic, which is registration of all the waste haulers in the that are operating in the county, and some reporting requirements. We could, as these other examples have illustrated in the GBB study, we would like to know how many miles they're driving, how many road miles they're operating, that sort of thing. Or we might want to put emission standards or something on the vehicles that they can operate in the county. But I think, as GBB suggested, it's a living document. It would need to evolve. We would need to get the board to approve, the county lawyer to approve the revisions we've suggested. We would need to meet with the haulers and see what their attitude would be about reporting. GFL made it very clear that they don't think it would be fair to be asked to report and not have smaller haulers also be required to report, which is, that's fine. But one thing that we should understand very clearly is that we can require haulers to report, and other counties are doing it.
So, thank you, Peggy. That sets the stage for this discussion. So I think, if there aren't any questions, I just want to hand it over to Lance to help us with what is the next step to making this happen.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
Is the quarterly reporting, that seems, I assumed it was annual. Do other counties require quarterly reporting? That seems really frequent.
Yes, they do.
They do. Okay.
Mm-hmm. In some ways, it should be less onerous to them if they're reporting quarterly than annually. I mean, it's easy. We assume, they should be keeping track of this, and in other counties they are. So, I mean, if we decided initially that we couldn't ask them to do quarterly reports, we could do an annual report, but we won't. It could be helpful to us to have information more.
Yeah, one of the things I and Jay sort of brought this up, I think that they don't collect by county, they collect within routes. And those routes may be collecting tonnage from multiple counties.
Yeah.
So,
well, Arlington has that in their in the information that Teddy prepared. They ask for an explanation of that. They ask a hauler, if you're not just collecting within our county, we still want you to estimate explain and estimate what you think you are collecting in our county.
That I was just going to say, I think so. We would just need to have a place there for a formula for them to be able to use some sort of modeling to make a calculation.
Right. And they also want to, in these other counties, they receive it by tonnage, but they're going to be small haulers that don't know the tonnage, but it can be estimated from the yardage, the quantity of waste. There are tables to determine if, depending on what the material is, what the tonnage would be based on the yardage.
Well, I would think, I mean, these guys are all going over scales and paying tipping fees, so they should have a receipt for tonnage.
But not for recyclables, right?
Not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know where if they're going straight to the transfer station, probably not. But those, I mean, these guys all have scales. They can just run those trucks over scales. But they do have a requirement to report recyclable tonnage. So somehow they're already doing that because they're reporting it theoretically to the state.
Right.
So here's I believe this is an example of a tonnage report.
Right.
That Arlington County is using. Are there any other comments? And if not, Lance, would you, or questions?
Yeah, I just like, Peggy, do you, is there any information about other counties that, like not in Northern Virginia, like other maybe smaller counties or towns, you know, elsewhere in Virginia? I wouldn't expect there would be, but I was just wondering.
Well, I think we chose what we thought was the most relevant. And GBB also made a choice.
Yeah. Oh, no. I just was wondering if you knew of other counties, like maybe in Central Virginia or other areas that were doing this. Just curiosity, not.
Well, the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority, which is our neighboring area, they get pretty healthy reporting requirements out of the haulers. I mean, I don't know why we seem to have a problem in the TJPDC when we ask for information from the haulers that they haven't been felt the need to.
It's because we haven't had a national hauler. You have Waste Management and Republic Services are servicing Eastern Virginia. Waste Management and Republic Services are Fairfax and Arlington. So they're used to this and they're big. You know, we've had small sort of local haulers, but GFL is a big hauler. They're the third largest in the country. So they should be prepared to do this.
I agree. I think they probably are doing it in other localities.
All right, since we only have 5 minutes left, just making some decisions about how to proceed with this information. And Lance, what do you need from us? Or what is the next step?
In my vision was that the committee would establish a task force or designated work group of folks to really, you know, dig into the details of the opportunities in front of us. You know, it's, you know, well beyond the reporting. I think there's, you know, there are some standards that the Loudoun County has, for instance, that are beyond what was contemplated, but could be really positive in terms of environmental impact and customer service quality. I'll say, you know, the switch when GFL bought out the two major haulers in this area was really, really difficult for a lot of citizens. We had no legislative authority to control that in any way, no fines for being late, no threat of loss of their permit, which allows them to perform in this state. After the snowstorm, similar problems in some areas, getting no service, particularly for recycling, for quite a long stretch, and we had no way to do that. And I know from just strictly from a litter standpoint, which is something we all fight, you know, having some clear requirements about you know, tarps on your vehicles, having them covered, you know, having a decal on the vehicle that identifies them, that has to be there as a licensed requirer. So if they take their waste to the IBMUC, you know, we'll have a way, not that I would want Ravanda to have any kind of enforcement role, but, you know, to monitor some basic compliance and the ability, if we're concerned about their lack of compliance on environmental aspects, like the condition of their fleet, for some basic best practices, that we would have the ability to do something about it as a community. I think there's and some of this is philosophical stuff that the board will need to consider carefully. I think just having an ordinance drafted is probably not going to be sufficient for them to consider it. I think it's really going to take being walked through alternatives and why specific recommendations on specific fronts are important. And I was very pleased to be able to do this GBBC study. It took a lot longer to do, primarily because of COVID than we would have liked, and moving it forward has been slow. And I think it does. As long as it's taken to get here, I think it deserves some special, focused attention from people in the committee who are interested in doing that, to really work through, sort of possibility by possibility, what the recommendation from the committee would be, and bring it forward for the committee to weigh in on.
Right. Well, I don't know how many people had the opportunity to review the the revisions that had been proposed, but they're pretty thorough. But I agree that there's, like, Jim is new to the board. The board hasn't, been thinking about the revisions to Chapter 13. They hadn't seen them back in 2020. So I agree, it needs to get a careful look, but I'm certain that the board can understand the need for the requirements for all the reasons you said, plus the need for measurement and tools to know what kind of progress we're making on our climate action plan and on reducing waste and diverting, organics and recyclables from the landfill.
I also just want to recognize all the work that went in, to these revisions that Teddy and Peggy have created. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of work and information that was gathered there that really is a great roadmap. I feel, that exists. And so Lance, you and EJ, you sent a list. And so you're looking for the committee to just kind of go through it piece by piece and address those questions or those considerations.
Those
aspects.
Yeah, I mean, those were intended as prompting questions. Some things that we feel in particular that are interesting to, and not with necessarily obvious answers, but I think should be considered and addressed. And if folks had really some folks had taken it on to this point to really read it, that we might have had a discussion. We're out of time, of course, today, but if not, just to put on the radar that that this is more than just data, and data is very important, and I think we all believe that the climate action planning process really vetted that and showed how important that is, and I think it's really doable. I just think also that there are other opportunities beyond that as a community and as a staff and committee combination, to consider to present before the board for consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe all of the committees can just commit to like taking the first 20 minutes of their next meeting on it, so that like it's all divided between all of the subcommittees. I mean, that's just one thought. I mean, since we're out of time, and we do need to address that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And I think that what you said, Lance, is that I think what you're saying is we can go beyond just the data collection with this, that there are other important aspects that can be addressed, things that can be addressed with it, and using that lens.
Exactly.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's a great idea, Terry. So in our groups, really, if each of us, we can commit to taking a good look at that and reviewing those, that list that EJ had sent out. And the thing we didn't get to has to do with the paper sort, and just Peggy and I have been talking about just the concern of that facility and the equipment there, and hopefully we can have a discussion about that next time we meet as well, or just want to recognize that it is a concern. But thank you everyone for the meeting today, and we look forward to seeing you next month, and have a wonderful rest of your March. All right.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks, Christy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Christine.
Bye-bye.